It's the Field of Vision podcast with your host, Jordan Eisen.
How's it going, everybody, and welcome into the Field of Vision podcast. Joining me today is Andy Holloway of the Fantasy Footballers. Pretty big deal in the fantasy industry. Fantasy Footballers, they are really the ones that got me into listening to podcasts at all, and so that's a big deal to me. And I mean, I've been listening to you guys for a couple years now, and I'm a huge fan of this show. So, Andy, do you kind of want to tell me a little bit about what you do over at the Fantasy Footballers?
Sure, I appreciate you having me on. We host the largest fantasy football podcast, and it's myself, Mike, and Jason, and we have a great team, couple producers, and a team of people here, and we just really take a lot of joy in providing interesting, entertaining, and accurate content for the fantasy football community year round. Been doing it for about 5 years, and really had a lot of fun in the space.
Yeah, so basically what we're going to do today is just kind of break down what it's like to be on the Fantasy Footballers. As you said, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, fantasy football podcast out there, and talk a little bit about the free agency results as well. So over on the Fantasy Footballers podcast, I think kind of what you guys what I like know you for best is it like makes fantasy football entertaining, and rather than just numbers and ideas, it like you guys have fun for sure. So a big part of that is you come up with player nicknames, and it can be something as stupid as Darnell Anderson. But what's your favorite of all of the ballers nicknames you come up with through the years?
Yeah, I think it's probably a tie between Darren Walrus for Darren Waller, which we've always had a lot of fun on the show, and maybe Big Montana for Will Disley, because Big Montana, you got some music that we play with it, and really we bring up the nicknames and they kind of come out of nowhere and just make it more fun to talk about these players.
Yeah, Big Montana is very iconic. It's sad that Will Disley didn't really become a thing. I would have loved to hear more from him, but yeah, I'm a big fan of that one too. And then what's your favorite moment on the show when you do like 1,000 episodes and you spend however many hours recording? There's a lot of stuff that happens. So what's like one either most meaningful or just funniest, something that stands out to you?
Yeah, I guess it's hard with that many shows, and we always try to do a highlight video every year. But I guess the one that comes to mind right now is when we had the funky news drop, where normally we have an ordinary regular news sound effect on the show, and all of a sudden Brooks had accidentally put in some wrong music that was titled news, and it was this funky music, and that moment, and knowing how Brooks probably felt during it, but how funny it really was. Like, we like to say that nobody can really screw up on this show, because if somebody messes something up, the rest of the people are going to make fun of it, and it's going to be a fun show moment. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I remember that one for sure. The one that I was thinking of is Jason's leg cramp. That one
man,
that was really something too.
Yes, he is famous for that.
Yeah, yeah. And then you're all from Phoenix. Maybe not from, but you currently live in Phoenix. So who's your favorite Cardinals player right now?
I think all of us would say that our favorite player on the present roster, well, I guess maybe Larry doesn't even count since he's not signed yet. But Larry Fitzgerald is kind of an iconic staple of the Arizona market. So we all love Larry. I guess since he's not under contract, you might go with, somebody else that you like on the team. And I guess I love Chandler Jones on the defensive side. I love Kyler Murray. And hopefully this year we see a playoff-bound Cardinal franchise. We hope so.
You could also count J.J. Watt as your favorite.
Yes, he is a new addition that I'm sure we will enjoy having.
Yep, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, you guys have a pretty stacked team. I'm from St. Louis, and
All right,
I
former
mean,
home of Arizona Cardinals.
true, that is correct, but as long as I followed football, we haven't had a good team. So I kind of just randomly picked the Ravens like 7 years ago, and I've stuck with it. But the Cardinals, honestly, I don't know why. I watched. I don't know if you remember it because it's kind of arbitrary, but that one game against the Packers in the playoffs with the
Oh,
Jeff
I was at
Janis
that
Hail
game.
Marys. Oh, you were there?
Oh, the
That's
Jeff Janis Hail Mary. No, I was not at
yep.
that game. I know our producer, I think he was at that game, and he's a huge Packer fan, so it brings me
Oh
joy to
yeah,
know
yeah.
that. But,
And then
no, I was at I thought you were gonna talk about the Kurt Warner Aaron Rodgers battle, which was another playoff matchup. We have had quite a few pretty good games against the Packers over the years where we
yeah,
win
but
all the time.
the Jeff yeah, of course. The Jeff Janis game though with the Larry Fitzgerald run in
Unbelievable.
time, that was really like the first football game I watched and like really, really enjoyed. And I was probably pretty young at that time, but the Cardinals, I guess probably ever since then, Carson Palmer, that time, they've
Sure.
been top 5 favorite team. I'm a fan too. Um, and then also, who's your favorite non-Cardinal player at the moment?
Oh, that is a good question. I mean, it sounds super cliche to go with somebody like Patrick Mahomes, but he's up there for sure. Um, it's fun to watch players that just can do stuff that nobody else can do. So Aaron Rodgers is in that category as well. When you see, quarterback's the toughest position of any sport to play, and there's only a few great ones. And so when you get to live during an era of the great ones, it's a lot of fun. So those are
Y-
probably my favorite right now.
Yeah, it does sound cliche, but I think it's something like that is probably the right answer. I might go
Well,
Justin
Justin
Herbert.
Jefferson's pretty good. Who were you going to say?
That's true. Justin Herbert, the other
Sure.
rookie
Yeah, he's
Justin.
he's been a blast.
Similar idea as Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers, just like less established and more like I guess unpopular, more what's the word? Contrarian, I guess, to pick
Sure.
Justin Herbert. He might be my favorite player right now. I'm a big fan, and we'll talk a little more about him and the Chargers as we continue talking about the free agents today. All right, so let's talk Patriots. They made quite a few moves, but honestly, do any of them mean anything for fantasy? Like, do any of their moves make you more excited to draft any Patriot this year?
No, it was a big old disappointment for what they did because they added big names to an offense that I'm not excited about. And, when you talk about Johnny Smith and Hunter Henry, and then you have kind of middling at best, at least talents in the NFL with Kendrick Bourne and Nelson Aguilar, where you're sitting there saying, this is a low passing volume offense. Cam Newton's going to throw for 3,000 yards and he's going to distribute the ball to 7 targets. And it's just tough because they're not conducive to fantasy football players right now. There's nobody on that team that you're really interested in. Even at running back, they're going to have multiple backs. They just re-signed James White. If anything, it sounds insane, but if you put all of them in order, I think Nelson Aguilar has the best chance to do something of relevance just because he seemed like he could carry the load at times for the Raiders last year, and maybe the big playability getting downfield makes him a spot start, but I'm just not excited. And it was such a disappointment for those of us who want tight ends to do something special and there to be more tight ends than Darren Waller and Travis Kelce, to have Jonnu and Henry both go there to have their, you know, workload shared is a disappointment.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Do you think like they're gonna be drafted as a top 12 tight end, either one, or are they just gonna
I
be
don't think
waivers
so.
guys for the whole year?
No, I think they're going to be in the way. I mean, some people, top 12 is not an incredibly high bar for tight end. Top 5 would be a high bar. So getting into the top 12, look, if you have the number 12 tight end and your league mates have the rest, you have the worst tight end in your league. So could Jonnu end up there? Could Hunter Henry through touchdowns end up there? Maybe. but I think they're going to be right on the edge in terms of their draft position.
Yeah. It sounds about right. I might, like, if I am in a draft where I just don't have a tight end and I want to take one in the last round, like, I think Jonnu Smith, if he is going that late, I think he could be a solid pick just because Hunter Henry has really, really struggled with injuries. And I think that could definitely continue for him. And if Jonnu is the only man there, I mean, still not great since as of now, it's only Cam throwing passes. And I'm not too excited about that.
Just hard to count on it. Yeah.
Yeah. But if he's the only guy there, I think Jonnu's decent, but I think you should be even if Hunter Henry does go down, which like you can't really predict, but he's proven to be at least somewhat injury prone so far in his career. But yeah, Jonnu, if he's alone there, like he was pretty. I mean, Anthony Firkser, but whatever. He was pretty much alone in Tennessee too, and he didn't do too much. So yeah, I kind of agree that I'm not excited to draft either one like I would have been if one had gone to like the Chargers or another tight end needy team. All right.
Yeah, makes sense.
So they the Patriots weapons, maybe we don't care too much about them, but are you at all interested in Cam as a backup, maybe like your QB2 on your team, or is it just no,
Well,
all hands off?
yeah, I mean, if you're in a 2 quarterback league, he's gonna have fantasy relevance without question. I mean, just running the football, goal line presence, that's what he does. He finds a way to have fantasy value even when he looks ugly on the field throwing the football. So, uh, you know, am I interested? I'm not pursuing Cam Newton, but I'm not gonna be a fool either, and even if that offense is not what I want it to be, I have to understand that these running quarterbacks give you a baseline, and certainly in a 2 quarterback league, he needs to be rostered and started.
Yeah. I pretty much agree with that too. Cause I mean, before last year, I thought Cam was a pretty, like, maybe not top 15, but top, like a decent thrower. And then his running ability makes him a top 15 quarterback. So I was pretty excited about him going into 2020. And then he just looked awful. So I really just have to think that it was an injury. It might not have been, but he was so much better in years past that maybe he's just old, but he's like 30 something. He's not crazy old, but I think I think I'm a little interested in Cam if he comes out week 1 and he maybe only puts up 250 yards, but he like looks like he doesn't have a noodle arm anymore, then I definitely would be interested in, especially in Superflex, because he does rush for touchdowns as well. And then
Absolutely.
you said in the backfield that you think they're going to rotate guys more or less. Do you have any interest in Damian Harris or anyone else that you think will be in their rotation?
If we get into training camp and Damian Harris seems to have a stranglehold on the position, and he's a pretty talented back, and if this team is going to be predicated on the running game, I think I'll be on board with Harris as kind of an RB2-3 type of situation. But you know, even when the Patriots were a highly effective offense, it was still difficult to predict their backfield for many, many years under Bill Belichick because third down, James White's going to be on the field. We know that now. And so if there's another name that shows up in training camp or a veteran or another signing, it's going to make it very difficult to count on Damian Harris. And unfortunately, that will limit his upside.
Yeah, I could see him being a top 100 pick just because like he's a running back and I think he's pretty obviously the best on his team. So I could see him being top 100, but he's not like another guy who might have the role but like not he doesn't firmly have it. It's just kind of a guess and a hope. But he did look solid in parts of the second half of the year while he was still healthy. The other team that made a significant amount of moves and also puzzling moves is the Raiders. They got rid of their O line and signed a running back. Do you have any clue what's going on? I know you like Josh Jacobs. I like Josh Jacobs. I so in a dynasty league I had, we drafted it was slow draft and we started during the season, and I realized, oh shoot, I don't have any running backs. So I made a deal with a guy, traded Tyreek Hill for um, Josh Jacobs like mid draft, and then we made the trade, and then like the next day Kenyon Drake signed. So what do you think about Josh Jacobs now that the backfield is definitely a little muddier?
It's very difficult to kind of understand what John Gruden's going to do with that offense and with his running backs. I mean, you drafted Josh Jacobs to be somebody that was a 3-down threat, and his skill set in college was catching the football, and then you don't throw him the football. So signing Kenyon Drake is a terrible, terrible sign for their confidence level in Josh Jacobs. I get the impression Gruden is eye rolling every time Jacobs gets hurt or is questionable for a game. So I am cautious about Josh Jacobs. I think you have to just have a fair expectation for him. Last year, it looked like it could have been a breakout situation, and it didn't really come to fruition, not to the degree we hoped. And the team is moving forward with multiple backs. So I think that Jacobs is probably an RB2. He may be better than we think if Drake doesn't have a huge role, but they paid him money to come in and complement, and it's just kind of a mess in Las Vegas.
Yeah. And we talked about that you are a Cardinals fan. So do you actually think Kenyon Drake is good at all, or do you just think he's kind of an ancillary piece that a questionable team paid up too much for?
I think that he is a pedestrian NFL runner. I've always thought that. He had a small burst of time coming over from Miami and Arizona where everything lined up. He was throwing the ball a ton. But as a runner, he can't hold down a whole backfield. He didn't in Arizona last year. And so I think that he's a good complement, an emergency starter, and probably not relevant for fantasy football players in Las Vegas, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think I'm still gonna probably get a lot of Josh Jacobs, not too willingly, but just because I think I like the talent, and I don't think Kenyon Drake is anything too special to consistently take away like valuable touches from him. But yeah, I think Jacobs is all right. It kind of reminds me of the Broncos backfield from last year, with Melvin Gordon and Philip Lindsay, where we didn't really know what to do, and we just kind of threw Melvin Gordon in the 40s and 30s range, and Philip Lindsay a little bit later. But it's going to be interesting to follow in draft season what we do with the Raiders backfield, because it's definitely a little
Kind of a mess.
questionable. I keep on saying questionable instead of dumb, but it's not. I don't understand why you get rid of that O line and get a running back. It doesn't make sense to me. Let's talk some quarterbacks.
Yep.
So we got Ryan Fitzpatrick to Washington, Andy Dalton to Chicago, and then the Saints and their whole uh, thing that I don't know what's happening there. But Ryan Fitzpatrick, none of these guys are like going to be excited about using them. But let's talk about what they mean to their teammates. So Ryan Fitzpatrick to Washington. I'm really excited about this. I could see Washington being a 9-7-ish team with Fitzpatrick, and if the Cowboys don't manage to get any better on defense, and Daniel Jones doesn't really do much more than what he has in the rest of his career, I think Washington could run away with the division again. Um, what do you think about McLaurin and Gibson? And do you see like Fitzpatrick as a huge upgrade over Alex Smith and Dwayne Haskins and whoever they had this past year? Or do you just kind of expect more of the same?
I think he's an upgrade. I think he brings stability to the offense in terms of passing volume. Is he going to win you every single game? They might not need him to. They have a great defense in Washington. So he's going to make mistakes. He's going to throw interceptions. He's going to have a quarter where he looks like the best quarterback the NFL has ever seen, and he's going to have 2 quarters where he looks like he's throwing to the other team. But he will bring passing volume consistency, something that Miami had from him last year, where you're not going into the game. Last year you went into these Washington games and you didn't know if they'd throw for 175 yards. I think you get a raised bar for McLaurin, a better floor for their offensive pieces with Fitzpatrick behind center. So I'm excited for it. The league's better with Ryan Fitzpatrick in it. And, I'd love to see him make the playoffs for the first time in his career.
Yeah, that would definitely be fun. I think he can do it. It's going to be interesting to watch that one play out as well. Andy Dalton in Chicago. This one is odd. Do you care at all? Or is it just draft Allen Robinson as if he has a bad... Go ahead.
Brutal to, I was just kind of shaking my head because it's Andy Dalton elicits negative emotion for most people. They don't, he was run out of Cincinnati and suddenly he's their number one quarterback in Chicago. So Allen Robinson's always been able to put up stabilized numbers with every possible downtrodden quarterback in the NFL. So it doesn't get me excited. It seems pretty lateral from Nick Foles and Mitch Trubisky. So I think Robinson's your safest bet, and then you're just praying for other Chicago offensive pieces.
Yeah, so I know a lot of people are kind of excited about David Montgomery. Does this signing affect any of your thoughts about Montgomery, or is it kind of just...
Yeah, I mean, David Montgomery benefited from all the workload at the end of last year, which was nice. It was nice to see him do something with it because he had higher carry count games in the past and done nothing. So it did seem like he found himself a little bit. The offensive line got things figured out a little bit, and he was a really dominant player, but you knew his volume was going to go down this year because they'd find some complementary pieces. I think he is a fringe RB1, RB2 type of running back.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's definitely on the lower end of RB1 if he's an RB1 at all. I would be willing to take him. I don't really love it, but he seems to have a decent bit of volume there.
Yep.
Let's skip what's going on in New Orleans because I don't think that's going to be a productive conversation because no one really knows. And then also running back, I mean, we've got Jamal Williams to Detroit. That's not a good thing for DeAndre Swift. And then Phillip Lindsay to Houston, which I don't know if that matters at all. So those seem to be kind of committee backfields. Not too much to talk about there. So let's continue on to wide receiver, where there's a lot of stuff going on. Let's start at the top. Kenny Golladay to the Giants. Does this make you more excited about Kenny Golladay than when he was with Matthew Stafford? Do you think of Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton any differently, or what?
Yeah, I think both
general?
of those. Yeah, the move it's interesting for the offense in New York. I mean, they needed a true alpha. I don't think it helps my perception of Kenny Golladay for him to be in New York versus Detroit. I think it probably downgrades him a little bit because Daniel Jones has just not been a consistent NFL quarterback. He can run the football, but he turns the ball over. He's not shown that he can make accurate passes on the regular. And Kenny Golladay is a kind of, he's going to help him in the sense that he's big catch radius. You can make a mistake, but I don't know that Golladay has the kind of ceiling that he had in Detroit. It downgrades everybody else in the pass catching realm for the Giants, but that could be a good thing in the sense that last year it wasn't really great to start anybody on the Giants. You couldn't really pick the week. It was a Slayton week or a Shepard week or a Golden Tate week. So if you were going to be tempted to do that again this year, maybe you would have ended up disappointed. Now you can just focus on Golladay. I think the move helps Daniel Jones have at least a modicum of potential in the right matchup, but that's kind of how I see that situation.
I'm not excited this year, but in the future, once the Giants kind of inevitably move on from Daniel Jones, I'll be excited. I like Sterling Shepard. I like Darius Slayton. Really like Kenny Golladay. Like Saquon, of course. The defense seems to be coming together. O-line looked solid last year. I think this is a good team just without a quarterback, and
Yeah, it
that
seems that
makes
way.
me that makes me unexcited this year for any of their pieces. I'll take them if they're at the right price. Barkley, of course, I'll still take probably top 4-ish. I don't have my ranks together yet, but I'm still taking Barkley. But in the future, I like this team. And maybe they'll even make some noise this year if Daniel Jones can just be decent. Will Fuller to Miami. This one's interesting, I think. Tua kind of got hated on a lot last year. I don't really get it. He was a rookie. He seemed to do the job. He almost made the playoffs. That might have been on the back of Ryan Fitzpatrick, but he did fine, and he was a rookie. So are
Yeah,
you
people haven't been
drafting?
very forgiving to Tua.
Yeah, that is true. Are you taking Will Fuller though? Are you downgrading Devontae Parker? What's going on
Yeah, I
with
mean
Miami?
it's really difficult in Miami because even though you can believe that Tua can grow, you haven't seen it. So for fantasy players, you want to see something to increase the probability that they can provide the fantasy value you want from their weapons. So I think Fuller is at least somebody that has shown he can be productive on lower volume, big plays, touchdowns, and that's something you'd need with Tua. I doubt Tua goes from what he was last year to a top 10 in passing yards type of player. So Fuller has some upside. It's not my favorite destination for him. It would have been nice to see what he could do going to a different offense that you knew was going to throw for 4,000 or 5,000 yards. But I'm still hopeful and cautiously optimistic that he can do a little bit more than people expect in Miami.
Yeah, we talked about Justin Herbert a little bit earlier. I would have really liked Will Fuller to the Chargers. That would have been really fun because I mean he was throwing bombs to like what Jalen Guyton, and I mean Guyton had a decent season, but Will Fuller's better when he's
Yeah,
healthy at least.
that would have been nice to see.
Yeah. Um, the next guy on this list I've got is Corey Davis to the Jets. Just quickly, would you be okay with Corey Davis as your wide receiver 2 on your fantasy team, or
No,
is
I'd be
he?
depressed.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd be
it's a fair
heartbroken.
response.
I would find Al Borland and I would cry into his arms. No, I don't want Corey Davis as my wide receiver too. It's I don't even know who the quarterback's going to be in New York. Maybe I'd feel differently if Justin Fields was drafted and he looked great in training camp and something changes. But right now, as of today, I would not want that fate on even my worst enemy.
I get it. I'm not a big Corey Davis fan, but figure I go RB heavy and I get some running backs on my bench. Maybe for some reason I take a tight end early, something like that. I could see a situation where Corey Davis is my wide receiver too, but yeah, I would not be happy about it. But it's possible. Next we've got Curtis Samuel to Washington. I think this is interesting to accompany Ryan Fitzpatrick. I just think their offense is coming together. I'm not really sure if you'll be able to use Curtis Samuel. I think he might just play the J.D. McKissick role, kind of. But I think he'll be more useful to their real life team than to your fantasy team. Someone that I do want to ask you about though is definitely Marvin Jones. He's like shorter DJ Chark, slower at this point DJ Chark. Is he at all interesting, or do you think he'll kind of help out DJ Chark on a team with presumably Trevor Lawrence taking over at quarterback?
Marvin Jones is one of those players that I think this addition is great for the actual franchise. It's a reliable veteran piece to help stabilize the wide receiver core. I'm not sure you're going to be able to count on Marvin Jones week to week. I mean, it's rare for a rookie quarterback to sustain a top 36 wide receiver. And it's rare for Marvin Jones to be a top 36 wide receiver. He bounces in and out of that range, puts together 5 great weeks in Detroit, and then disappears. So I think it's a great real life move, like you said, with Curtis Samuel to Washington, but I'm not super excited about the fantasy upside.
Yeah, fair enough. And then you've got all these older wide receivers just signing 1-year deals on random teams. I guess you can take them in the last round if you really like one of them, but I'm not interested. It's something that I do kind of want to hit on, though, is Dan Arnold to Carolina. He definitely projects to be their starter there. Do you care at all? He definitely flashed with the Cardinals a little bit. He's definitely a last round tight end type of guy, but he also had lots of drops, but he's crazy athletic. He's a wide receiver with tight end eligibility, basically. So is that interesting at all to you, or is it just...
Not yet. I mean, they lost Curtis Samuel, so if Dan Arnold really seems to have a stranglehold on that position and that depth chart, and we think he'll be out there on the field a lot, then maybe I'll get interested. But that'll be something that I think ends up being a waiver wire pickup a few weeks into the season. I doubt he's going to be drafted. And so I'll kind of wait and see. There'll be other tight ends in that category of Dan Arnold where it's like, well, that might be interesting, but I didn't see anything last year that made me think the tight end was a focus of this offense. And so until I see it, I probably will press pause.
Okay. Yeah. I'm interested, but I'm not drafting him early at all. Like,
Sure.
maybe I'll grab him in the last round if I just need someone to start week 1 and his week 1 matchup looks all right. I could see that happening, but I'll keep my eyes peeled on waivers because I'm a fan, if that exists, a fan of Dan Arnold. I don't know.
Sure.
But, for what he is, I like him. And for the record, he's one of my favorite nicknames on the show as well, the Postman. Doesn't deliver
There you
on
go.
Sundays.
Yeah, that isn't one thing in his repertoire is he has a name on the show.
True. Yeah, I like that one. I don't remember how it happened, how it came up, but it's a thing nonetheless. That really wraps it up, unless you have anyone else that you're interested in, or do you think that's kind of everyone?
Well, I would just say that I'm really excited about the new season and the fact that we'll be kind of moving past all of the tumult of last year. And I think a lot of fantasy players will be excited to come back in 2021 and get excited about fantasy and the new season.
Also, the Week 17 argument won't have to be a thing anymore, so that's nice.
True. We'll have an extra week of regular season play.
Yep, hopefully. I mean, I don't think it's official yet, but it's gonna happen.
It'll get there, yeah.
Do you want to tell the people where they can find you on Twitter? Any other plugs or anything?
No, I mean, you can follow the show at the FF Ballers. I'm at Andy Holloway on Twitter, and we're year round. So like you said, we're just trying to bring a positive, accurate, entertaining show to listenership that loves fantasy football. The fantasy football community is awesome, and obviously you're part of it as well. And we just we'd be happy to have you tune in.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. Fully advocate for it. Check them out for sure. As always, you can find me at FOV_sports on Instagram or Twitter. I'll talk to you next time, but until then, Eisen out.